Diane James joins me now from UKIP. Welcome to you. An MEP currently and formerly a councillor, Waverley Borough.
Still a councillor
in Waverley Borough in Surrey. So let's start with trying to assess why UKIP's advances, if you like, in London appear to be limited. Do you accept that there's a problem at the moment for the party in making headway in the capital? Well,
clearly there is this issue of if you are a migrant here, and if you believe the smear stories that one way or another we're suddenly going to expel everybody, which is, I say, totally untrue, unfounded and a smear, then, you know, that will influence how you're going to vote. If you're an individual here, first of all, there is no issue about sending people home. But in looking to the future, what we're saying is if you're here, your job will be protected. We won't then introduce the additional challenge of more immigration, uncontrolled immigration, putting that job at risk.
So is it because, though, to be absolutely clear, it is because of London's high migrant population that you haven't made inroads there?
No, I'm not going to accept that the blame just lies with that particular factor. We have grown enormously over the last few years. We did very, very well in the European elections. We have made no secret of the fact that we're an insurgent party, if you like. We are taking on the two big incumbents. We've got a lot of work to do, but, you know, it's on track.
But is it because London is particularly educated, cultured and young that they don't go for UKIP?
No, I don't accept that at all, because if your premise...
that was what Suzanne Evans said, wasn't it?
Well,
I mean, one of your colleagues...
Yes, possibly, but you're asking me the question this morning.
Absolutely. Well, exactly. That's precisely the point.
Yeah, and what I'm saying in response is, if you were to try and apply what you've just said to the South East, that then would not have delivered the results that we got in the European elections and the inroads we've made in at local authority levels. So
yes, but presumably you would be wanting to appeal to the educated, cultured and young.
Yes.
And so how do you think you'll do that?
Well, let's link then your questions to our immigration policy. What we're saying is that we need to take, if you like, the pressures off that uncontrolled immigration are bringing, particularly to the London scene. Let's put into context, London's unemployment rate higher than the national average. 1,000 plus homes have got to be created every single week to try and accommodate. That is putting enormous pressure on individuals here. If we then introduce a programme that allows a degree of catch-up, and we've talked about 5 years, we've talked about a points-based system for skilled workers and such, that allows people to actually get a foothold.
Should we take those points up there?
Yes,
so how come,
please.
because you're right that obviously unemployment is higher in London, but, you know, but the gap with the rest of the country has reduced over these last few years. And so that at a time when immigration into London has increased, which suggests, does it not, as you've heard business organisations saying, that they are net contributors to our economy?
I don't think we have ever put across a policy to say, one, we don't want any immigration at all. What we're saying is let's try and get a grip on this. And in terms of a visa system, which is a part of our policy, it would allow individuals on the high-skilled end of the spectrum to come in and equally address the unskilled.
And I've never said, like, none at all. But clearly the levels that you are recommending, as we hear from a business organisation, London would come grinding to a halt if they allowed you loose on immigration policy.
Well, I'm always intrigued by this Armageddon situation that's portrayed, that if we have control of our borders, control of migration into this country, control of migration based on either skilled workers or unskilled workers, that all of a sudden we're going to face imminent collapse. Nobody's suggesting that. What we are saying is let's give this country and let's give our capital city the opportunity to catch up. If, as a result of the aspects of uncontrolled immigration into London, that is contributing to housing shortages, house price values going stratospheric, gridlock on our roads and such, we've got to be careful.
What's a normal net rate of immigration for you?
Well, Nigel has made the point, if we go back to the pre-Tony Blair days, before Labour opened the doors to absolutely everybody, we had a situation of 50,000 roughly a year coming in.
Roughly, about 3 years in the 10 years before Tony Blair came to power?
Well, all right, pick me up on, you know, just a 3-year spectrum.
Well, it was much higher than 50,000, that's what I'm saying.
But what we're saying is there is a comfort zone to allow us to catch up of around the 50,000 mark in terms of skilled labour. That will address the known shortages that we've got at the moment in terms of doctors, scientists, engineers, these sort of key areas. We know we've got a lot of people here.
What about Polish plumbers? What about plumbers? Have we got too many or too few Polish plumbers here?
I'm not interested in where they come from. I'm more interested in why are we not addressing that shortage in terms of bricklayers, plumbers, electricians, and doing something about our extraordinarily high unemployed youth rate.
And in net, if we were trying to look at sort of, you know, the plus and minuses or value and where they might be a drain or whatever, I mean, what's the situation in the NHS, do you think?
Well, I was touched by the example of St Bart's, which went into special measures only a couple of weeks ago. And two of the issues that took that hospital into special measures was high bed occupancy rate and failure to meet waiting time targets. Seemingly, the link was in terms of too much pressure on the services. Nobody is saying that we are not reliant on foreign doctors, on foreign nurses. But
well,
then,
what would happen though? What would happen if you took that element out? What would happen though? Do you know what the figures are according to the King's Fund for how many non-British-born medical staff work in hospitals in London, for instance?
I don't have exact figures. No, I don't.
What would you think if you knew it was about a fifth? I mean, what would you imagine? Paint a picture of what you think might happen to the capital's health service if you took all those, a lot of them fairly low paid as well, I would have thought, but you took those people out of the equation.
Well,
they weren't working in the
I
health
made
service.
the point at the beginning of your programme and interviewing me this morning. We're not sending anybody back. What we're saying is people that are here stay.
But what would happen? Who would fill those jobs? What would happen if you?
And part of our
there's a natural wastage, isn't it? Someone would retire, would leave. If you were then not allowing or you were restricting the number of people that would be going into those jobs, what would happen to those hospitals?
Well, forgive me, but what I've already explained is that we're saying we will have the Australian points-based approach to bring in doctors, engineers, scientists, though actually those key areas where we know the
high skilled you're talking there. What about, I mean, not that it isn't high skilled, but what about nurses? What about cleaners? What about auxiliaries? Well, that make these hospitals tick 24 hours a day.
Yes, and if you look at our policy in terms of the different visa levels that we've suggested should be in place, it's all about addressing demand and supply. We know full well that Romanians, Bulgarians would love to come here and work in the care sector. We know that there are some unscrupulous firms that are doing that.
What about this? Time's running out, but what about this migration commission that you'll set up to try and work out what the appropriate levels are and where the skills are? Who's going to be on that board? Will there be representatives of business there? Well,
I should think there would have to be, wouldn't there? I mean, I would like to see as well representatives of public sector organisations.
And you'd have to make it so if they're all saying to you, we really do need to start increasing these levels up to 100,000. We need to keep up near levels where we are now, 240,000. What would you do then? Would you ignore the recommendations of the Independent Commission?
No, we would not ignore the recommendations. But if you look at the figures that are coming out already in terms of the areas of need, future numbers in terms of doctors and nurses, those are all within the targets that we've set.
OK, time is up. But Diane James, thanks very much indeed for
coming in.
No problem at all.